Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It is our Week 13 waiver wire Q&A with myself, Patrick Daugherty, and our waivers guru, Kyle Dvorchak. His waiver wire article is live on rotoworld.com. It's a short week. It's a packed week. No buys for the first time, I believe, since week 4. Kyle, buys are done for the season. Surely there's not 6 teams on bye in week 14 for some reason.
Wait, is it really 6?
6, not just 4.
Oh, my God.
Yep. So good luck making the playoffs with 6 of 32 teams unavailable.
I mean, there are some formats where the playoffs already started. Like, I think a lot of the FFPC stuff, like, you either had to play, I'm getting the bye in week 14 and I don't care, or I really, really need to prep for week 14. Luckily for me, it didn't matter. I'm not going to make any.
Yeah. So anyways, astonishing there, but it is crunch time. We are trying to make the playoffs. Some of us have been eliminated from the playoffs. Some of us got eliminated by the Cooper Cup touchdown last night when they were down 37-14 with 1 minute left. And they, for some reason, kept passing, Kyle, and I am broken. But so we need help. Waiver wire. So this year, thank goodness injuries have seemed down all year, Kyle, at least at running back.
Yeah.
For the waiver wire, for kind of like months on end now, there have not been running backs coming available. I don't know who you're going to say the ad of the week is, but we need to add players. It's slim pickings, though. Who would you say is the week 13 waiver wire ad of the week?
Yeah, I'll go with the running back. It has been at best spot starts for a lot of. This week is good for Zach Charbonnet, for example. Last week was good for Emmy Abdullah, maybe next week as well. And I think we're in that spot again, but we're in a really good spot start situation for Washington's Jeremy McNichols. We have Brian Robinson goes down with an ankle injury early in that game, comes back sort of, and I don't believe plays a single snap in the second half.
Emphasis on sort of.
Yeah, he came back. So he left on the first drive, I believe first carry of the game, leaves to the locker room, x-rays supposedly, comes back, gets 3 immediate carries, and that's basically it for the day. I think he's out there for a few more snaps, and by the second half, they had essentially shut him down without ruling him out. Okay, that's fine. Austin Eckler, go out and be the workhorse back. And on the nearly final play of the game, is the final kickoff, right, of the game, he takes a scary concussion and is now confirmed to be in the league's concussion protocol, which sets us to Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols. Chris Rodriguez, I don't even know if he was on the active roster last week because he's been a practice squad call-up. So Jeremy McNichols is the de facto RB1 if Ryan Robinson can't play, and he literally couldn't play a half of football last week.
No, I'll say this in the Commanders' backfield situation. Absolutely, I am prioritizing Jeremy McNichols over Chris Rodriguez, Kyle. But I do think it could be one of those situations where like Chris Rodriguez is more of like the 1-for-1 replacement for Brian Robinson, and McNichols is more of the 1-for-1 for Austin Eckler, but will have like a bigger role than like he'll have like the lead role.
And yeah, Rodriguez is worth an ad too, in the same way that like I was desperate to get a guy like Emmy Abdullah, who I was banking on like 8 touches for. I think you could bank, if both Eckler and Robinson miss, I think you could bank 8 to 10 Chris Rodriguez carries. They might not be the most high value carries, but as you pointed out, it has been a thin season at running back for the waiver wire purposes. Rodriguez is you're going to rank, Pat. You are going to rank Chris Rodriguez, and it's going to be uncomfortably high.
I know. By the way, the butterfly effect of that cowboy is not going down. And that guy.
Yeah, Turpin on the kick return. Yeah.
Returning the onside. Was it Turpin on the onside
kick return? Oh, no. It was someone else on the onside.
The onside kick return. If he had just gone down, the game's over. Austin Eckler doesn't get injured. Instead, he goes that makes the house call. I mean,
I just realized they had multiple house call kicks.
Yes, I know. Totally insane. By the way, couldn't help but notice that you didn't mention Sincere McCormick as your ad of the week. Do you even know who I'm talking about?
Of course I know. He's the guy who plays over Dylan Laube.
Yes. Davis Maddock, our industry friends, have never been down worse, with Sincere McCormick being ahead of Dylan Laube. We got 2 questions about the Bucs defense. Cowboys defense against Tommy DeVito this week. Kyle or
Cowboys defense. Defense.
Really?
I mean, Tommy DeVito's he's pushing Tim Boyle and David Blau, not quite Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen's the GOAT, but he is pushing the second tier of worst quarterbacks to play in the past 5 years.
Bucks are playing the Panthers, so the Cowboys are the clear. Tommy DeVito, the thing is, this sack taking absolute machine.
Free man.
Like,
he just takes them
stop
all the time.
Did you see the stat? It's kind of pointless, but so he's taken this I think Tommy DeVito took 9 in the game last year. Will Levis has taken 8 twice this year. You know, like I was like, man, good quarterbacks. Like never. I had a theory like, man, you're never gonna be a good NFL quarterback if at any point in your career you took 8 sacks in a game. And I looked up Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, so not exactly representative, but 598 combined career starts. They never once took 8 sacks in a game.
Never once.
Never once. Brady took 7 once in 2001.
That's a great pointless stat, because you'd think with so many starts, literally hundreds and hundreds of starts, 2 of the most storied careers, they've had their low points, and to never get to that mark, and Tommy DeVito is like, I got this instantly. Come on.
Started 300 games, but they were never once bad enough to take 8 different sacks. Weekly viewer Chad is here. 2 matchups with Tampa and a matchup with the Cowboys on tap. Is Bryce Young now in the conversation for people in Superflex or 2 quarterback leagues? Or Kyle, is Bryce, are we still just kind of getting ahead of ourselves? I don't think he's had multiple touchdowns at any point during this 3-game hot streak. He's playing faster. He's playing better. He's still not playing explosively. Do you think Bryce Young will be a factor in Superflex and 2 QB down the stretch?
I actually don't hate this. 2 matchups with Tampa this late in the season to sandwich them both at the end of the fantasy season is pretty nice. It's a shame it doesn't come for a quarterback we particularly care about. Like, imagine if it was like Mahomes or whatever. It's like 2 matchups against Tampa. He's putting up 20 points at least once in those 2 games.
You digress. Yeah.
But I do think even the bottom 20th percentile quarterback projects for more than most flex players you can put in your super flex. Bryce Young really is pushing to that bottom 20th percentile. But like you said, he's playing faster. He's processing the game better, and it's good matchups from here until the end. I do think he's certainly in the conversation. Like, if you told me you're starting him because there are apparently 6 teams on bye 2 weeks from now, that's a reasonable spot start.
Real quick, who will score more fantasy points the rest of the season, Bryce Young or Will Levis?
Oh, I'll go Bryce Young.
I think I'll go Will Levis.
That's fine.
Despite being Mr. 8 sack taker himself, having a mind meld with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine and having Calvin Ridley seems to have really revived Mr. Will Levis' season. Lindorfin's another weekly viewer. Happy Monday. Happy Thanksgiving week, everybody. How do we rank these guys rest of season? Half PPR league, but really any format, Kyle. Jerry Jeudy, who seems to have kind of predictably overtaken Cedric Tillman as the wide receiver 1 in Cleveland. Jeudy, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, now week to week with a shoulder injury. Or Quentin Johnston. How are you ranking those 3 rest of season?
I'll go Jeudy, Johnston, Pittman. No, let's go Jeudy, Pittman, Johnston, because it does not look like Josh Downs is going to play this week. Obviously, they can't officially rule him out yet, but the shoulder issue looks like at least a 1-week problem. And usually when it's like, well, he's not playing this week, but we're real hopeful he's next week. He's like 50-50 at best for next week. So I feel like if you're doing the projections, you project him to miss at least, you'd call it 1.5. You'd split the baby and call it 1.5 games. So Pittman as his team's de facto number 1 receiver, I guess trumps Quentin Johnston.
It does. Quentin, even with like the ascendant Chargers passing attack, they're still treating him more as like a downfield role player. And pretty consistently, getting 4 to 5 targets, 3 to 4 catches, being efficient on that role, but just not quite the usage we need. And Jerry Jeudy kind of quietly pushing for wide receiver 2 value, I would say.
Yeah.
To be like, the schedule is tough. But you mentioned in your waiver wire column, like even against tough opponents, like Jameis, like he ain't reading all that, like dropping back still 40 to 45 times. And like the difference, like you see a tough matchup, you're like, we better run the ball this week. Jameis like, well, 2 or 3 picks, we'll see what happens. Hopefully
he's like,
we get some turnovers too.
They are, and then 4 quarters, he's like, dang, they're pretty tough. I'll be honest.
I know. So I was fearful of Jameis's stretch run schedule. I have kind of adjusted. Like, the schedule doesn't matter for Jameis.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be good for the Browns because he'll throw picks, but like picks don't cost you hardly anything. The worst part about the interception is that it costs you plays down the road, but in terms of the actual pick itself, that costs you nothing in fantasy. I'm going to flip my answer to Will Levis. Speaking of, you get X opponent twice, he gets the Jags twice over the final stretch.
Wow. The Jags with I've never seen a team down worse for a firing it did not make. Doug Peterson being allowed back in the building after the bye week is quite the development. Raul, who's been here several times too, he said Kyler is, hey, we can't say that word on this show, all right? He says Kyler is the least bad word you've ever heard. He is done with Kyler. Should he ride with Knicks all season? It's also 9-3. Does they stand a chance of winning with the suspect wide receiver room, Mike Evans, Cedric Tillman, DJ Moore, Josh Downs. He needs only 3. Kyle, you're unfrozen now, Kyle. So rest of season, more fantasy points to start here. Kyler Murray or Bo Nix? Kyle is having some technical difficulties. You might need to remove yourself and come back, Kyle. Well, first off, without seeing the schedule, it's a little hard to say. I will still go Kyler Murray rest of season over Bo Nix. Just where I think Bo Nix has like become a little more consistent. Kyler's floor is maybe a little lower than Bo Nix's. I still think the ceiling is ultimately higher than Bo Nix's for Kyler. Do you agree with me, Kyle, that I think Kyler still ultimately has a higher ceiling than Bo Nix? I think Nix's floor has been jacked up a little bit above Kyler's, but it's frustrating. I've been leading the Kyler's never been good train all season. I think I'm probably still rather starting Kyler Murray down the stretch, but do you agree?
No, yeah, I agree. His ceiling is so much higher. Like, they're both adequate runners, but in a given game, one of them can break off multiple 50-yard runs. Like, I think we had like a stretch of a month where Kyler, that is, broke off 2 50-yard runs, and he's probably a better passer. So yeah, Kyler,
but just because of I think the greater spiked week potential, still the better overall supporting cast. But I don't know, man. There's going to be weeks where you'll want to start Bo Nix, I'll say. And do we think this receiver room is good enough? Ladd, Evans, Tillman, DJ Moore, Downs. Yeah, we do. But Raul, Downs getting injured, and Tillman fading. It's somewhat shaky, but you have a legit top 3 at least in Ladd, Mike Evans, and kind of DJ Moore. So we'll just see there. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Let's see here. We have another Rinkside Rips. That sounds vaguely inappropriate. 10-man half PPR. Dropping Trey Benson for Jeremy McNichols, and why is the answer yes, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, unless this is just a pure bench stash, you have no interest in playing them.
Well, Kyle is having some more technical difficulties, but yeah, you got to drop Trey Benson for Jeremy McNichols because the time of year to be worried about contingency value, to be worried about this like stashes is over. You're trying to maximize your lineup and your potential for each given week, the week in front of you. Jeremy McNichols has value this week. Trey Benson, we don't know will have value any week. So yeah, we just got to drop Trey Benson for Jeremy. The Cardinals running game has gotten like weirdly dysfunctional all of a sudden. What do we think of Jaylen Warren rest of season? Sorry, Kyle, getting Kyle in and out. Jaylen Warren seems to have finally gotten back his pre-Arthur Smith, his pre-2024 role. Is it enough? Oh, Kyle, now your audio is still shaky there. Cannot hear you by what I mean shaky.
Yeah, I was just muted.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Jaylen Warren, is he back to what we were seeing headed into 2024?
Yeah, I don't want to jump too far ahead. I do think the role is roundabout back. Like you said, it's the pre-Arthur Smith role. And I think a lot of that was like the hamstring, then the knee. And like they had to pull him out mid-game because he just, quote, didn't look right. I kind of think they were right about that he just didn't seem like he was right. So for the first close to 2 months of the season, it just didn't really seem like he was healthy and the team trusted him to stay healthy on a dozen or more touches. I think we're past that point. I still want to see him string together multiple explosive games because really every single game last year, he looked like the most explosive running back, not only in the Steelers backfield, but in the NFL. Like he was like the Tony Pollard. Every time he touched the ball, you're asking why he isn't the one getting all of the work. We still haven't quite seen that Jaylen Warren in a large string of games, but the role being back really does make me feel a lot better.
It's been almost all the way back. I will say like a full house week, like this week, he might have a little trouble getting into the top 30. But then again, even in the full house weeks, the depth has not been very impressive at running back. And I bet he probably actually slots in about RB27, RB28. And the Steelers seem like they're going increasingly, maybe dissatisfied is the wrong word, Kyle, but they're acknowledging that Russ is Russ. And they are sure bringing Justin Fields onto the field a lot. I think they're going to continue to lean on that running game. And yeah, the Jaylen Warren role is back. And then honestly, the volume could maybe even continue to increase for Jaylen Warren. So we like Jaylen Warren down the stretch. Bucky Irving, a must start going forward. He was already in lineups almost every week, but he bookended the Bucks by with first to second most touches of the season, then his most yesterday. That was in a game that wasn't even competitive. Finally seems like he's overtaking Rachaad White in almost every situation. there's going to be a few more rug pulls in this backfield, I'm sure. But Bucky Irving, again, that depth is not very impressive at running back this year. I think I haven't done my initial rankings run through yet, but I think I'll probably have Bucky in the very low end, but the low end RB2. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think you might even be underselling it. I was going to say you might have him in the top 20. Like I could very much see you getting
possible.
Him in there. Yep. I think the big thing that you pointed out was that it's coming in all phases now. What I felt very good about heading into last week was he's getting 40 to 50% of the carries. He's an explosive back, getting just shy of half the carries. That's RB3 plus range. It's maybe not quite RB2. And the big thing holding him back was that he wasn't the team's passing down back. And Rachaad White is good at that. So it would be, in my mind, it was going to be hard for him to actually supplant White to go out there and get 4 or 5 targets in a game. But I think at some point talent wins through, and we reached that point last week when he started running the majority of the routes, when he had a 20% target share. Like you said, we're going to get rug pulled again. They're going to find the situation where they want Rachaad White to play more. I think they're muted now.
I was yelling at my son who's at the door. So keep talking, Kyle.
I thought you were yelling at something football related, because the thing I was about to say is even last week, they put Sean Tucker in for a goal line carry, and it was like an immediate fumble, I think. So, like you said, they're going to rug pull us again from some situational nonsense at some point. But this is a ceiling of volume, and especially high value volume, both getting the carries and the targets, that I didn't think existed heading into this week. So absolutely, every week starter, I'm going to try and convince you to get him into the top 20.
By the way, they still were intent as recently as the first quarter yesterday on making it a 3-man thing where Sean Tucker, he vultured Bucky getting them to the 1. Then the next series, they try to do it again, and he fumbles. He got 1 touch the rest of the game, 0 of which were carries. That was despite it being 23-0 and 30-0. So I think maybe the Sean Tucker situation has finally been laid to rest. And yeah, it's just wheels up from Mr. Bucky Irving. Is Ramondre Stevenson borderline unstartable, or is it just about the matchups and projected game script? And we didn't really think that game would go quite as haywire as it did for the Patriots yesterday. That was one of Week 12's most disappointing performances, Kyle. But yeah, it's the Colts this week. I don't think the Colts are going to run away from the Patriots. Maybe famous last words. This is just about he's borderline unstartable if they're going to be behind. But a game like the Colts, we still probably have to get him in the top 24. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. The Colts, although they've shored up the run defense a little bit since just getting absolutely gashed for like the first month of the year, they're still not a particularly good run defense. And with Anthony Richardson under center, I don't really think they have a strong ability to blow other teams out, even a team as weak as the Patriots. Like, look, I love Ant. It's not that good, man. Like, you're not going to go out and have Anthony Richardson and just completely boat race a lot of teams. He's still got a lot of kinks in his game to work out, which is good for the game script purposes of Ramondre Stevenson. So I do think the volume is what it is, and especially because he can win in all phases of the game, probably still a top 24 back this week. If they're projected to lose easily in a game down the road, I actually think it's fine to rank them outside the top 24 at some point.
Let's see if the some point is, if they're on bye in week 14. Oh, man. And then they come back at Arizona, at Buffalo, then versus the Chargers.
Ones.
Yeah, bad matchups for the fantasy playoffs for Ramondre Stevenson. Adam Warren, so with Caleb Williams producing better the past 2 weeks and Josh Downs week to week with a shoulder injury, who do you think has the most upside with potential shaky QB play? Looks like we're missing a second part of that.
There's
question.
A second quarter.
And here we go. DJ Moore or Brian Thomas with Trevor Lawrence possibly back. Who do we think has more upside the rest of the season, Kyle?
I feel like more upside is probably Brian Thomas. Like, Brian Thomas was doing superstar stuff before Trevor Lawrence went out of the lineup. And I think DJ Moore, I mean, like, I love DJ Moore. Was very fortunate to get over 100 yards last week when so much of his game was just built out of screens. And I think that's so much of what the Bears offense is right now, that to see a truly explosive offense like we did last week was convenient. And I don't think we should project it to happen every single week. We were just coming off of a 3 or 4 game stretch where people were saying Caleb Williams should be benched. Unknown commenters on the internet were calling for Tyson Bagent. And we got one, admittedly, really
unknown commenters in the Bears locker room were calling.
Yeah, supposedly, yeah. Bears Twitter supposedly thinks it's Tyson Bagent's dad. I've been deep in Bears Twitter, and some people are saying that's where the leaks are coming from, inside the house's house.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, Bears always having a normal one. Chad wants to know, we benching Marvin Harrison Jr. for Devon Valet at this point. I believe Marv's been over 60 yards only 3 times all year. Kyler Murray seems to not know he exists. Basically, is Marvin outside the top 24? Probably yes, with no one on bye this week. And it's starting to become like desperation season where we are playing like guys who we treat as really wide receiver 4s over Marv. I'd say probably no. But how do you evaluate on the Marvin Harrison Jr. ongoing situation in Arizona?
Yeah, I kind of fall where you do, where the top 24 is a tough sell. Like you said, we've got all the teams back this week, but are we throwing desperation dart plays like Devon Valet, who I wrote up and is the title of the waiver wire article this week, but I do still think he's a fun wide receiver 4. And I'd like to see him continue to see this role because he played a strong role early in the season and then he got his ribs banged up a little bit and they just cut him out of the offense. And now they're integrating him back in, but it hasn't been this clear linear trajectory upwards. And his head coach is famous for rug pulling us. He's rug pulled us so many times this year. So I think Devon Valet is a good add in a very reasonable start this week. I don't think Marv has fallen that low yet.
Mandy down bad at running back at the bottom of the waiver wire priority, no less. She needs to pick one of Ray Davis, Tank Bigsby, Jags off bye this week, Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy fumbling issues, or Jalen Wright. So first off, Mandy, these are desperation ads, but I've seen worse desperation ads. Like, again, desperate. You're truly desperate here. But like these guys are at least getting touches, Kyle. Who do you consider the best desperation ad out of this group?
I will say if you think one of them, if you don't think all of them are added, add Tank Bigsby. If he is healthy and if he's healthy and gets a full week of practice in, doesn't draw a questionable tag, he probably splits the backfield and he's extremely explosive. And that's what you want from these desperation guys is even on 10 touches, they can get home. I'm not 100% sure he's playing this week. He's definitely not the safest in that sense. He could be a guy who you're having to replace at the end of the week. So Tank Bigsby, contingent on the fact that you don't think everyone else here gets added.
Bigsby too, they're at home. They are 5-point underdogs, but it's the Texans. Bigsby we know is Mr. Game Script. Like he gets scripted out of so many different games. But the Jaguars could be the get right spot the Texans have been waiting for months. But this seems like the game will probably be close enough for Tank to see those 10 to 12 touches. And Tank was definitely my first thought when I saw that running back group. Devin Singletary, I think if the Giants were doing anything other than outwardly tanking, Tyrone Tracy's role would be in trouble with the back-to-back fumbles. But like, why would this team bench Tyrone Tracy? Like it would just fundamentally does not make sense. So Devin Singletary, I don't think we're going to be steaming it all this week. All right, you're not worried about Devin Singletary. I mean, 2 really costly fumbles in back-to-back games. But do you agree with my assessment that they'll probably just view this as like part of the growing pains for a player in a lost season?
That's 100% how I took it as well. And it seems like how the team took it. I know the fumble, I think, was in the second half, but they ended Devin Singletary with just a handful of carries. He wasn't overly involved, and it didn't appear, just from looking at the game log, that Tracy was benched after a fumble was like inside the 5, if I remember correctly. And the previous fumble was in overtime. First touch of overtime, instant gives it away, and that's obviously an auto loss. But even off the back-to-back bad fumbles, they didn't immediately bench him, so I don't know why they would wait till the time.
Well,
off.
They kind of did, just to be frank.
Did they?
They benched him for like over a quarter. He did take over again on the final series of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we'll take.
They benched him. The next series, Devin Singletary did get the touchdown opportunity. Then there wasn't much volume for either guy. They were down 30-7, passing a lot. Tyrone Tracy was back on the field at the end. So I think maybe if there was any lessons to be learned, they're going to consider that he's consider him already learning it. So I just don't think we should be.
Folks, we don't have to worry about him getting benched. It already happened, and it's already over.
It's all right. And it's a very good. Tommy DeVito could totally derail this game, but it is a good matchup against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day. Kelvin wondering, should he drop Mark Andrews for Will Dissly? We're going to have a pretty significant data point on this after Monday Night Football this evening, Kyle. Will Dissly certainly seems like he's overtaken Mark Andrews in the volume department. Mark Andrews has become a somewhat reliable role-playing touchdown-based option as a tight end too. But who would you rather roster for the stretch run, Will Dissly or Mark Andrews?
Oh, this is bleak. I still think I'm going Mark Andrews, but am I wrong?
No, I think I actually am going Will Dissly.
The problem is like all of the data just says it's Will Dissly. I mean, all the data over the past, frankly, all the data of this season, or more appropriately, all the data of the past month and a half. It's been about a 5 or 6 game strong stretch from Will Dissly since he took over. I mean, that's important, right? But so is the entire history of Mark Andrews' career. He has a lot of data to suggest he's very good. And Will Dissly's career suggests he's mostly a blocker with the occasional big play. He's more than that now. I think we can change and say that he's more than that. But do we still want to bet on him over Mark Andrews? I know, but
the variable with Will Dissly is that it was always Pete Carroll. And it seemed like he had a certain way that he wanted tight ends to play. And Greg Roman, I guess, is sort of like that too. But Greg Roman is a guy who featured Mark Andrews. And Hayden Hurst just went on IR Monday too. So kind of like the snap splitting fear is gone for Will Dissly. And I agree. The track record is so long for Mark Andrews, but I think I will gamble and say this is one where it is open to interpretation though. Like Mark Andrews is a very defensible answer. I will gamble and say I'll go Will Dissly. But is someone saying that they have respect for me for dadding? Well, I've been very rattled ever since that happened though. My son came to my door. I've been so distracted. I've zoned out, unfortunately, during like 3 or 4 different questions, trying to regain my footing here, Kyle. Jonathan Brooks, rest of season, very disappointing, very unsurprising NFL debut against the Chiefs. It just seems like he's not going to be able to escape role player status, even though the Panthers are in evaluation mode. It seems like a guy who's probably his conditioning, maybe his knowledge of the playbook isn't up to speed yet, and they can't really force him onto the field. And they also love Chuba Hubbard. Are we just telling people to drop Jonathan Brooks?
Yeah, it's fine. It's a tough week on waivers, so maybe you don't really need to. If you're not, like, would I take him, if I'm not starting them this week, him or Jeremy McNichols rest of season? Like, I guess I would still take the upside shot on Brooks, but that's truly the decisions we're at. It is perfectly defensible to drop Jonathan Brooks. It's just a situational thing.
I would say you won't have any regrets dropping Jonathan Brooks.
Probably not, yeah.
Hard to see how it's going to happen for the young man. Cris wondering, Jameson Williams, Khalil Shakir, or Darnell Mooney this week. Of course, Jameson Williams has the Bears on Thanksgiving Day.
Khalil you don't have to look up who these guys play. Just play Jamo. Just do it.
Well, I don't know. Really? I mean, Darnell Mooney was getting close to every week top 20. They're playing the Chargers. Jamo is still, the targets have crept upwards. It's still maxing out maybe at 7. Bears defense, Kyle, kind of tough.
Nah.
I think I might honestly probably have Darnell Mooney ranked ahead of Jamo this week. I will say that.
Buddy, you're wrong.
Because Chargers, Falcons, what's the total here? 47.5. Yeah.
That's okay. That's pretty good, actually. That's pretty good.
48.5 for the Lions and Bears. The Lions are 11-point favorites of Thanksgiving.
Well, I was going to say Lions are just carrying the water there.
Gotta be honest, 11 points feels very, very aspirational. Even for the 10-1 Lions, it seems too high. We have someone wondering, is Rico Dottle good, or is he one of the fat squirrels in Denny Carter's backyard? Rico Dottle, he's dispatched the committee. There's no longer a committee, but it's not a good offense. He did have his best game against the Commanders probably on Sunday. Rico Dottle, can he crack the top 30 this week, Kyle, with no buys?
I'll say the roll last week suggests to me that he can. I know it was a very weird game. They won and they were leading for a good chunk of it, and that's not how you'd expect them to play, frankly, any game, let alone a game against a good team. But the fact that he went out there, gets 19 carries, and then he catches all 3 of his targets, that's like an RB1 roll. 22 touches is an RB1 roll in terms of like fantasy RB1. This is not an offense that can sustain a fantasy RB1. But that role, plus even an offense that is just not the way it looked in Cooper Rush's first start. His past 2 starts, not particularly efficient, but they're letting him air it out and they're getting points on the board in some capacity. Easily, I'd say a top 24 running back. If you wanted to rank him closer to 20, I'd be fine with that.
I don't know about easily top 24.
He's got 22 touches. 2.
He does, but again, there's only 1 week of buys left. The offense is still, it's less dysfunctional. It's still dysfunctional. I will say, thank goodness, the Cooper Rush start against the Eagles was a red herring. Like, he's not that bad. We are back to at least getting like usable junk volume from Cooper Rush, which should at least keep the offense on the rails. But I mean, it's going to be mostly a team playing from behind. He's just going to have a hard time.
Rico Dottle this week, they play the Giants at home.
No, I'm sure they are favored this week. In fact, they are by 4. But then, then it's the Bengals. Oh, then it's the Panthers. Then it's the
Panthers, yeah.
Rico, I would say top 30 for sure. Maybe some weeks top 24. I kind of view it as unlikely he'll get in the top 20 for me, though. B, no doubt. You're wondering, kind of, I think, tongue-in-cheek, Noah Gray over Travis Kelce rest of season. But my question will be, is Noah Gray top 24 at tight end now, where he's like getting into the desperation tight end 2 streamer range, or is it still just too fluky? I mean, 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks is very interesting. Still a very strong air of fluke to it, though, Kyle. What do you say about Noah Gray?
I mean, it is totally fluky. It will be the only time in his career he scores 4 touchdowns in 2 games. Like, that is what it is. He's a backup plus tight end, both in usage and probably in talent. But the Chiefs don't have the personnel to run a ton of 11 receiver sets. Like, they're one of the least heavy 11 receiver teams when they're passing in the NFL. And that's meant a decent role for Noah Gray. I will say, and I put this in the waiver wire column, his route rate over the past 2 weeks of 61% isn't that different than what it was in the previous month. It's just the targets that upticked in the past 2 weeks to 5 and 4 as well. Those are not crazy numbers. But that being said, the tight end 24 is the sickest, most disgusting tight end you can imagine. He is in that desperation play. And we are like, I've had to play more desperation tight end spots this year than I feel like I have any single year. Tight end's been so dreadful. I happily took a 0 with Davis Allen last night, and I'll do it again. So if I had Noah Gray in that team, I'd be so happy.
Noah Gray is kind of like, this might sound like a league that doesn't exist, but I'm in a few of these leagues, 14-team leagues with 2 flexes. Occasionally you're going to have to start someone like Noah Gray. But yeah, he's still someone where he's purely in the desperation realm. He's not moving ahead of guys, even like, who's like a lower end, who's in like the tight end 18 to 20 range. Why am I blanking on this right now? For a while, it was like Jonnu Smith, but he's left behind.
He's too good.
That range. Will Dissly is left behind that range too. Noah Gray is real quick pulling up the rankings here. Like, it's not loading, Kyle, of course, here.
Isaiah Likely. What about like him versus Likely?
No, still easily Likely, because that's what you're hoping for with Noah Gray. Is Isaiah Likely, a few big plays. Maybe Dalton Schultz, Pat Freiermuth are really both tumbling down the ranks.
Those are good ones. Those are good desperation plays that you could take Gray over.
Because it's similar volume but better touchdown opportunities when Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. So that's the range he's in. That's like his ceiling for Noah Gray. I'll say that. That is Noah Gray's ceiling. Elisha has a bye, guaranteed a bye, which they want to, so maybe stash a defense for the playoffs or weeks 16 and 17. Bills against the Patriots and Jets. Well, there's your answer. Colts against the Titans or Giants. Bucks against the Cowboys and Panthers. I'll eliminate the Bucks. You want the Bills against the Patriots and Jets, or the Colts against the Titans and Giants? Definitely feels like the Bills to me there, Kyle.
Yeah, I won't. I'm not going to argue with that at all. It's Bills.
Because you want good defense. A team that's going to be playing with a lead, so teams have to throw against them. Sack opportunities, turnover opportunities. The Bills are going to be massive favorites for both those Jets and Patriots games.
Which team did you eliminate?
I eliminated the Bucks.
I don't know. I feel like Cooper Rush and Bryce Young is a pretty fun stretch of defenses or opposing quarterbacks too.
They're okay, but I mean Bryce has been playing better.
Yeah, we'll see.
The Bucks defense is the worst of those 3 defenses too.
Agreed. Yeah,
because even the Colts defense has actually kind of come on of late. Brett wondering here, Malik Neighbors, who has been complaining, potential squeaky wheel. Against the Dallas Cowboys or Terry McLaurin against the Tennessee Titans. The Titans defense is honestly getting a little scary. Who are you going with for week 13, Malik or McLaurin?
I think I'll go McLaurin. Like I don't see how the Giants succeed on offense, and it's purely a Tommy DeVito stat, but the fact that they just don't have a path to success. They're not a good offense, and they don't have an avenue to be a good offense is enough for me to just say, like, don't concern yourself with playing their players when it's in a close spot, when it's Neighbors versus McLaurin, who are both good fantasy options.
Mandy chimes in, by the way, her desperation ad last week was Dylan Laube, and she was sincerely disappointed he did not get a touch. So I got to be honest. I mean, we knew the Laube rug pull was coming. I didn't expect it to be with a guy I had literally never heard of.
Oh, no, I knew that was going to happen. I mentioned him in an article, I think. I knew for sure it was going to happen.
No, the rug pull was going to be quite that extensive. You have to give Antonio Pierce credit. Chibot saying the squirrels are getting fatter nationwide. The squirrels look very lean in my yard, to be honest. I haven't noticed
that many fat squirrels.
We still just have whole grain acorns in our yards. We're not fortifying them the way Denny is. Chad wondering Justin Herbert or Jaden Daniels rest of the season. Honestly, kind of a tough question. Jaden Daniels, the ultimate getting away with it against the Cowboys yesterday without an 86-yard pseudo Hail Mary. It's a pretty bad fantasy day again. Justin Herbert continues to come on sort of like a freight train. I wish I had a less hyperbolic comparison to that, Kyle. But Justin Herbert or Jaden Daniels, let's be real, we're talking about the fantasy playoffs at this point.
Yeah, I think it's Herbert. I don't like you said, as much as I really appreciated that 86-yard touchdown to Terry McLaurin.
It was life-changing.
It mattered a lot, man. Let me tell you, it mattered a lot.
It was life-changing.
And I was going to say, it's not repeatable, albeit it's literally a repeat of a thing he did early in the season. It's not, this time it counts. It's really not repeatable for him to get away with it on an 86-yard touchdown to save his fantasy day. I think it's Justin Herbert. I don't think the Commanders right now are playing in a way to score fantasy points unless they get an 86-yard touchdown.
The Commanders are just the classic young team that were out over their skis to begin the season and just couldn't stay ahead of the adjustments. Not that it's just defensive adjustments that are bringing them down, but we thought they were ahead of schedule early in the season, and it just turns out they were ahead of schedule. And Cliff Kingsbury, where it looked like totally exonerated, completely innocent earlier in the season. Again, the same old problems are happening in Cliff. The offense is getting stale. People are out adjusting him, and the Commanders at this point they're in prove it territory. You got to prove that something's going to change with this offense because this Cowboys matchup, this was a smash spot, and they did not smash, and they in fact suffered a horrible loss. Andrew's wondering is Kyron Williams, J.K. Dobbins, is it worth dropping Jalen Warren to stash Blake Corum or Gus Edwards at this point? I would not do it for Gus Edwards because Gus is a contingency back, wouldn't even have the backfield to himself. But is it worth dropping someone who he's not starting on a weekly basis like Jalen Warren for a guy like Blake Corum, who would maybe be part of a committee? I would say would be a better contingency back than Gus Edwards. What do you say, Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely. He is a better contingency back than Gus Edwards, but Jalen Warren's the best contingency back out of all of these guys, and he just happens to have standalone value as well.
Let's see here. Cade Otton. Tyler wondering, is Cade Otton a droppable? Jaden Reed or Reed? I don't know which Reed. Is that Jaden?
It's got to be Jaden.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll start with Cade Otton. Cade Otton droppable with Mike Evans back. Honestly, I think it's just kind of one bad game territory for Cade Otton, who's still clearly the number 2 weapon of that offense. I'm not telling people to drop Cade Otton. Are you saying anything different, Kyle?
No, definitely not dropping him. I think we need to adjust from where we were when he was the team's number 1 receiver. It's clear he's not their number 1 receiver anymore. But as you said, their second weapon is who, if not him? I mean, maybe it's technically like Bucky Irving or something, but as far as non-running backs among just the players who can actually push the ball downfield beyond the line of scrimmage, it's not Jalen McMillan. It's not Sterling Shepard. It's no one.
I honestly might go kind of galaxy brain with Cade Otton and say it didn't appear to be the case yesterday, of course. I think Mike Evans being back is probably good for Cade Otton. Where Cade, it was unsustainable, could not be the number 1 weapon. He's not the kind of guy that defenses can be building a game plan around. And so I think it's probably good for him that Mike Evans is back to occupy that attention. And Baker Mayfield did hit 30 attempts yesterday. I mean, this is a game that just was not competitive. The stakes were really low. There weren't critical third downs. They needed to be moving the chains. And it's kind of a bad setup for Cade Otton. Yesterday, I thought I'm not really too worried about Cade. Jaden Reed, here are his past 5 target totals: 3, 2, 6, 3, and 4. I mean, it's hard to drop a guy as talented as Jaden Reed, but I'm assuming Tyler has a really, really severe roster crunch. Is it crazy to entertain dropping Jaden Reed at this point of the season where every week is make or break?
No. No, that sucks. Like you said, he's really talented.
Romeo Dobbs is concussed too.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, he's concussed.
No, don't drop him, folks. This time it counts. It's been, I just closed my phone. It's been something like 6 or 7 weeks since he had a 20% target share. 20% is not really that high of a bar to clear. Cade Otton freaking did it every week for a month, and Jaden Reed hasn't. But concussed Romeo Dobbs means things are different.
It honestly does.
It does.
It really does.
I'm being a little dramatic, but he's really good when he gets the ball. The getting the ball has been the issue for a long time. Romeo Dobbs is the biggest guy who gets the ball in this offense right now in terms of the passing game. It's really the running game that gets the ball. If you tell me that we have to start divvying up targets in a new way, I'm just naturally going to put some more in Jaden Reed's basket, and that's good for him.
It's a short week for the Packers. Thursday night on NBC, actually. Game total's 46.5 against the Dolphins. The Packers could just take the air out of the ball yet again. But I think Jaden Reed, he'll be in my top 30, which I think he was outside of my top 30 last week. A lot of fantasy rankers cannot quit Jaden Reed. There's been a lot of denial when it comes to Jaden Reed. But I think I'll have him back in the top 30. The Big Cheese, once upside ranked rest of season, DeAndre Hopkins, Rome Odunze, or Taysom Hill, the man himself, Kyle. Who has the most upside rest of season?
It's probably still DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah,
he can be Patrick Mahomes' #1 receiver. But, like, it's not as fun as I thought it would be, if I'm being honest. Like, I really thought he could be a difference maker for the offense, especially in the absence of both Rashee Rice and, at the time, Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think he's just another cog in the machine.
He's just older, slower Rashee Rice at this point. It's really kind of, they're not using him as like the sideline contested catch guy. Like, I thought maybe they would change their style a little bit and be throwing like 50-50 balls to Nuke. And they are not doing it. He does, though, clearly have the most upset. Odunze is getting interesting. He's looked a lot better since Shane Waldron was sent packing. But I think Odunze is probably a clear 3-3 there behind D-Hop and the dreaded Taysom Hill, Kyle.
Hell yeah, baby. I mean, like, Taysom Hill is probably one of the, I mean, he literally is one of the 10 to 20 most efficient players with the ball in their hands of the past decade. I mean, like, what does that mean in the context of who he is? I don't know. He's not one of the 10 to 15 most talented ball carriers of the past decade, but the way they get him the ball and what he does with it creates efficiency unlike most other players. And it creates touchdowns too. He's an extremely good touchdown scorer, unlike almost any other player. And now they have no choice but to keep scheming him stuff with Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, the backup running backs, like even the depth options at receiver, like Bub Means, they're all hurt. So they have no choice but to make roughly half the plane out of Taysom Hill.
I will say Taysom, I wouldn't even say it's more about Taysom necessarily. I think Taysom, what he's really all about is saying like teams should not give up like these change of pace, like quarterback type roles where it seems like they never work, but like they really should work. Like Blake Bell back in the day for Oklahoma, like Justin Fields, they're trying it. I think the Steelers might give it up, but what the Steelers are doing with Justin Fields actually should work.
I mean, frankly, if the Colts were trying to maximize wins, they would also have a QB rotation.
That's actually a really good, really scary point. Two-parter from Super Shaq, who said he and his girlfriend have noticed the fat squirrels in Virginia. So I don't know what's going on the Eastern Seaboard, the Mid-Atlantic. Sorry if it's not actually the Mid-Atlantic. I call Virginia the Mid-Atlantic. But the squirrels, no one knows what's going on. But he has an actual question. Is it over for Jacoby Myers? Should he drop him for Devon Valet as a bench wide receiver? I would say it's over if it's Desmond Ridder, Kyle. I'm trying to think it'll be Aiden O'Connell, though, on Friday. He's expected to resume practicing this week. Can Aiden O'Connell keep Jacoby Myers afloat as a top 36 receiver?
I was about to say, I was like, oh, come on, Jacoby had a good game. I would be over for him. And then obviously you made the correct point that it's probably not one of, like, I don't think Ridder is one of the worst quarterbacks. I don't think he's Tim Boyle. Do you think he's Tim Boyle?
Yeah, I do actually.
Oh, okay. I don't think he's quite there.
He can run a little bit, so he's not quite Tim Boyle, but he's close.
He's not good. Yeah. I mean, we are frankly splitting very ugly, sticky hairs here. So I do think it is a very big net negative for the offense. I think going down to Aiden O'Connell would only be a modest negative, and it would not be over for Jacoby Myers. And I would still hold on to him over Veli if you guarantee, and I still will, on the upside, quote, chance that Aiden O'Connell starts.
I think even if it's Desmond Ridder, I'm probably holding on to him over Devon Valet. It'll be a lot closer.
I had 1 game probation. Like maybe they can just scheme up enough easy, quick attempt, completions to both Myers and Brock Bowers that they hide Desmond Ridder. And you'll probably want to have held Myers in that scenario.
The Big Cheese, wondering about the Bills pass catchers and who we like the most. Keon Coleman, we hope he's coming back. They never put him on IR, but he's nearing an IR type timeline from his wrist injury. We think he'll probably be back for Sunday Night Football this week. Can you just break down the Bills? Who would you be most excited to start? Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, or Khalil Shakir if all 3 of them are active this weekend, Kyle?
I think it's probably Khalil Shakir. I think he's the only one you can bank on getting all of the routes. Like the last time we saw Amari Cooper before the bye, got just about half the routes. Keon Coleman coming back from the injury at probably not 100%. I don't think he gets all the routes either. I think if you told me all of them get an equal amount of routes, I'd probably take Cooper. So if this is a who can I trust for the first round of the playoffs, for the second round of the playoffs, hopefully you make it there, I think I would be going Amari Cooper in that scenario. He's been banged up and has still probably gotten, like, how many full weeks of practice has Amari Cooper gotten on this team? Like,
none.
This will be his first, if it's a full practice week.
I think I'm going to bet on Amari Cooper this week in the rankings for those. I think he's finally going to be healthier with the wrist. And the bye week came at a really, really good time for Amari Cooper, both for health reasons, but also playbook reasons. I just think we might finally get Amari Cooper unleashed this week. I mean, whatever that constitutes in 2024. But the 49ers really, really banged up. I think I'm going to gamble and rank Amari Cooper the highest. But it could be any of the three. Probably not Keon Coleman, I guess. But it could easily still be Khalil Shakir. Along these same lines, Cris, wondering about Dalton Kincaid. Not been living up to where he drafted him. Yeah, he's been very bad. Now he's injured. Would he be crazy to drop bench him for Schoonmaker, Tucker Kraft, or even Noah Gray? I probably would not go that far, correct, Kyle?
I mean, do we know he's playing this week?
We have no idea really of his. Again, he's another guy who basically, if you avoid injured reserve, you are genuinely week to week. He missed a game. Then he had the bye. I think he's going to be genuinely questionable this week with a genuine 50-50 chance at playing. But no, we don't know for sure if Dalton Kincaid's going to play this week. If
he doesn't play this week, I would cut him for one of these guys. Like, one extra week of getting a more valuable starter is impactful because he's not that valuable of a starter. I think he's like the tight end 13 or 14 in points per game. He's going to project a little better than Schoonmaker, Kraft, and Gray, but not by that much. That if you miss the run of waivers or if you miss one of these guys, you feel like, oh, well, it's all right. I've got Dalton Kincaid coming back next week or whatever. He's not particularly good and he's not earning a ton of high value targets. He projects for more than these guys, but he might not even play this week.
Yeah, we just don't know. Keep it locked to rotoworld.com on that one. Mandy, getting kind of an evergreen question we get every year. Is playoff preparation a thing? She traded for Kelsey a few weeks ago. She also has Sam Laporta. She was thinking about dropping Sam Laporta for running back depth. She wasn't sure if she should hold off for the running back run. My answer to this question, Kyle, is around this time of year, I do, like, unless I have like a bye, unless I'm like really locked into a top 2 seed, I kind of just start maximizing for a week-to-week basis and just trusting like things are so crazy. There's so much turnover every week that I can't really worry about 2 or 3 weeks for now. If I'm A, just trying to make the playoffs, or B, just trying to stay alive in the playoffs. But do you have anything to add or to counter that with? How do you approach your playoff roster building in like 12-team redraft leagues?
Yeah, I think probably, ironically, I don't care about like defenses and even kickers almost at all in terms of their long-term outlook. I'm just trying to score points. Those are the positions where, as you pointed out, things are really shaky, except for those positions, because the teams they are playing and the quarterbacks they're playing are relatively locked in. When I'm stashing a backup running back, I'm turning them every week because I just want the next best shot at if the starter gets hurt or if I take over the starter. There isn't much that changes. So I think if you want to do prep, it's actually, we've gotten a few questions already about this. The ones that are the easiest to prep are the defenses. And they're ones where you can gain a material advantage because playing Tommy DeVito is such a cheat code. Other than that, I am, like you said, unless I'm really locked into a top seed, I am just churning for win now points.
I will say, too, this is a time of year where some fantasy analysts might view it as sacrilegious. I absolutely roster 2 defenses a lot this time because a lot of times it is like, all right, whatever. Do I really need 4 like wide receiver 4s on my bench? Like,
yeah, I can stash Chris Rodriguez on the chance that another Washington running back gets hurt and he gets more 2-down useless work. Or I can get the team that plays Tommy DeVito twice, and that team is going to project for 4 more fantasy points than whatever other defense I would have started.
So yeah, like I know intellectually Devon Valet should be rostered, but yeah, dude, I'm just gonna have two defenses. Yeah. Instead, Chad wondering if I were stuck on a desert island, what one artist's music would I take? It'd be Stephen Malkmus. That's who I would take. He of Pavement, and solo career even better than Pavement. I would have Stephen Malkmus, Kyle. You don't have to answer right now if you don't want to. Bill wondering, Michael Pittman, Jameson Williams, rest of season, full PPR. It does ding JMO a little bit, but we probably have to say JMO, right?
Easily, yeah. I think for the Desert Island question, if it's an active artist, do they airdrop their new albums as they come out over onto the island? It feels like they should.
No, they don't. You're just stuck with an existing discography. So you want it to be someone who's been around a few decades.
Exactly. That was kind of my question. I don't know. Probably like the Black Keys, I guess, because they have a
I thought you might say the Black Keys, and a very, very long, somewhat varied discography. So yeah,
varied. It used to be a lot more varied. The past 3 albums are not that.
Yeah, they're kind of stuck in a rut. Let's be real. But
whatever. I mean, look, the old stuff was great, and the old stuff compared to the new stuff is going to be very different. I like the old stuff more, but like you said, the variation between those two probably matters a lot.
But yeah, JMO, even in full PPR, the upsides. This is a situation where you can't focus on the PPR element. You just have to focus on who's the best player element, and Jameson Williams just kind of blows Michael Pittman out of it. Not the case if it was Joe Flacco, we'll say. But JMO kind of blows Joe Flacco out of the water there. I can't speak. You know what I mean. Michael Pittman. We might be out of questions. I think we're out of questions, Kyle. Maybe we should just call it a day. We've had a very, very good chat. We thank you so much for joining us. We're sorry for the technical difficulties. Both Kyle and myself briefly rattled this evening. Thanks for sticking with us through that. We still had a full slate of content coming up this week, even though it's Thanksgiving week. All Kyle's articles are coming out. It's 32 stats. It started right. They are right.
I was literally about to make the joke. What if I was typing you in chat? Hell no, they're not coming out. Thanksgiving. Yeah. They'll come out at some point. Yeah,
they're coming out. My rankings will come out on Wednesday this week instead of Thursday. I'm podcasting with Denny on Tuesday. Kyle, Denny, and I are doing our week 13 preview show on Wednesday instead of Thursday, so you have it in time. Well, Kyle and I are previewing. Denny and I are previewing Thanksgiving on Tuesday, so you'll have that. Everything will be out. Full house, full week of content. So for Kyle and Pat, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back very, very soon.